Ari Fleischer, for coming on the couch today. We always appreciate your perspective. Do you have anything else to add before we go?
No, it's been great to be here. Thank you to all of you.
Okay, we'll be back tomorrow at noon Eastern. Now, up to Harris.
Thanks a lot, Katie, and everybody there. Fox News alert on this. That Coast Guard lieutenant who is accused of planning a mass terror attack is due in court at any moment. We are covering this story this hour, outnumbered over time. I'm Harris Faulkner. Federal prosecutors say 49-year-old Christopher Hassan stockpiled weapons for years while making a hit list of prominent politicians and journalists. They claim he wrote about his plans, saying he dreamed of a way to kill almost every last person on Earth. Let's go live to Jillian Turner outside the courthouse in Maryland. Jillian?
Harris, I'm here at the U.S. District Court in Greenbelt, Maryland, where Christopher Hassan's hearing is just about to get underway. It's slated to start at 1 p.m. Hassan is, as you mentioned, currently serving as a Coast Guard officer, though he did previously serve in both the U.S. Army and the U.S. Marine Corps. He now faces charges stemming from an arrest at his home, which is just a few miles outside the nation's capital, and the very lawmakers that Hassan was hoping to execute, Harris. District Judge Charles Day will be presiding over that hearing today, where Hassan now faces charges of illegal weapons possession and illegal drugs possession, though his prosecutors caution this is the very tip of a large iceberg. They say, quote, the defendant intends to murder innocent civilians on a scale rarely seen in this country. Hassan self-identifies as a skinhead, a neo-Nazi, and white supremacist, and was pursuing what he calls a return to an all-white homeland. Investigators recovered 15 weapons and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition in Hassan's apartment in Maryland, as well as large quantities of a drug called tramadol, as well as orders for many more. A hit list found on his home computer shows he was planning to kill dozens of Democratic lawmakers, as well as journalists. The hit list includes House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senators Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, and Kirsten Gillibrand, as well as new House members Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar. For journalists, he was taking hits at Joe Scarborough of MSNBC, Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon of CNN, and many others. Hassan today has been assigned a public defender. That happened just under an hour ago, though the court told Fox News that he will be reassigned new representation as he goes forward in this process and faces trial. But until then, Harris will keep you updated on all the breaking news out of this hearing in the next hour.
All right, we'll come to you as the news warrants. Jillian Turner, thank you very much. And this is happening. We are awaiting Jussie Smollett's first court appearance. That's set to happen about 90 minutes from now. The Empire actor surrendering to Chicago police this morning, now accused of staging a hate crime attack. Police say Smollett sent a racist threatening letter to himself and later paid two brothers to stage an assault.
Smollett attempted to gain attention by sending a false letter that relied on racial, homophobic, and political language. When that didn't work, Smollett paid $3,500 to stage this attack and drag Chicago's reputation through the mud in the process. So he has to be accountable for what he did. He orchestrated this.
Smollett, through his attorney, has denied playing a role in the attack. Matt Finn is live for us in Chicago. Matt?
Harris, President Trump is now responding to the news that Jussie Smollett has been charged with filing a false police report about that attack. President Trump on Twitter writing, quote, Jussie Smollett, what about MAGA and the tens of millions of people you insulted with your racist and dangerous comments? Of course, police say that Smollett claimed that President Trump's supporters beat him and called him racial and homophobic slurs and said, this is MAGA country. Police now say that was a lie. Chicago police also making some big revelations today. Chicago police superintendent saying Jussie Smollett did write that death threat letter to himself, which had a MAGA return address. And if Smollett did mail that letter to himself, he faces some serious federal charges. The FBI is investigating. Also, police say Smollett carried out this hoax because he was not being paid enough and perhaps wanted to use the publicity for leverage for better pay. The chief of police here in Chicago also saying that he paid these brothers $3,500 by check and promised them a $500 follow-up payment. And police here now say that, this city of Chicago embraced this actor. The show Empire is filmed here in this city, and Jussie Smollett turned around and slapped the city in the face.
I'm left hanging my head and asking why. Why would anyone, especially an African American man, use the symbolism of a noose to make false accusations? How could someone look at the hatred and suffering associated with that symbol and see an opportunity to manipulate that symbol to further his own public profile?
20th Century Fox just released a statement as well saying, quote, "We understand the seriousness of this matter and we respect the legal process. We are evaluating the situation and we are considering our options." That is a change in tone from 20th Century Fox. Over the past couple of weeks, they denied claims that Jussie Smollett was being written off the show because of all of his potential legal complications. Now they say they are considering their options. And Chicago police say they basically solved this crime or gathered all of this evidence by tracking down the brothers via their rideshare car that they used. Chicago police interviewed 100 people and looked through over more than 35 cameras, all leading up to Jussie Smollett turning himself in at 5 o'clock this morning with his attorneys, and now he's set to appear in front of a judge inside this courthouse in just about 90 minutes. Harris.
All right, Matt Finn, thank you very much. And this story continues to develop. John Yoo is a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President George W. Bush. You and I were just talking off camera as I was making some notes here. The problematic situation for Jussie Smollett is that this rides in two lanes. You've got the police side, but you have a federal side too.
Yes, I mean, he's in a lot of trouble because he's being investigated and will probably be prosecuted by both Illinois and the city on one side, and then the federal government on the other. The false police report, the hoax with the noose, the hoax attack, that's all going to be investigated, prosecuted by the city of Chicago, state of Illinois. But then the other crime he may have committed was mailing himself a threatening letter in which he allegedly put in a white powder and claimed that was a chemical weapons attack, which is the use of the mails to try to defraud, to try to launch a threatening hoax, even if it's on himself, and that's a federal crime.
Right, and what are the differences and damages and punishment? Because can he be forced to pay some of the money back, the resources for Chicago PD, and then is the crime bigger on the federal side penalty-wise?
It's a great question. Unfortunately, you can't get him to pay back all the money and resources that are going to be spent, or were spent on the investigation, but he could go to jail for a long time. On the Chicago and city of Chicago and state of Illinois side, he could be looking at 10 years just from the filing of false police reports, the hoax, and so on. From the use of the mails on the federal side, he could also go away for 5 to 10 years because he's also got conspiracy charges. He also might have been committing obstruction of justice by hiding all of this from investigators. He could be going away for more than 20 years.
That's new information because we'd always read that it was 1 to 3 years always, since yesterday, people. That it was 1 to 3 years potentially for filing a false report with the PD. I want to know how problematic it is when, and critics of this are saying it was a performance that he put on with Robin Roberts of ABC News as she did due diligence to try to get to the truth. Let's watch a little bit of Jussie Smollett, what he told GMA, why he was so upset that people didn't believe him. Not about being attacked, but about not being believed. Watch.
You know, at first it was a thing of like, listen, if I tell the truth, then that's it, because it's the truth. Then it became a thing of like, oh, how can you doubt that? Like, how do you not believe that? It's the truth. And then it became a thing of like, oh, it's not necessarily that you don't believe that this is the truth. You don't even want to see the truth.
You know, when you look at that now, wow. And he started off with some bad language at the top, and she said, well, why are you so angry? And that was his answer.
He's an actor. And he's so clearly a practice,
okay, John.
And he's a practice lawyer,
right?
As you can tell.
But he didn't act well enough to get past these charges.
I think Americans, and particularly residents of Chicago, but Americans should feel confident that one person and their word alone is not enough to trigger a criminal prosecution and launch an investigation. You have to have corroborating evidence. And so when the police started looking, finding other witnesses, camera tape, testimony of other people, the story really fell apart. And so we've been hearing leaks over the last 2 weeks that nothing was adding up. And so, yeah, he might have said something, maybe he thought it was the truth, but the police and prosecutors, they need hard evidence, and thank God they did in this case.
All right, let's talk about the other case awaiting court now. It's a hearing for a Coast Guard officer accused of planning a mass terror attack. Where do you see this going in terms of the charges against him?
Well, it's hard to think of it, but if there's someone in the country in more trouble than Smollett, it's the lieutenant, Lieutenant Hassan from the Coast Guard. It is a federal crime to threaten, plan, or attempt to kill high-ranking federal officers like members of Congress, Supreme Court justices, who he was looking into. That carries a sentence of life imprisonment. So he's going to be going away for a very long time. The best he can do is if his defense attorney is going to reach some kind of plea bargain with the government that might make it just 20 years or something. I think the government has him dead to rights with the combination of the weapons and using his computer, including, we should mention, he was using his work computer, which is at the government, to type up some of his ideas about why he was going to try to kill all these people.
You know, I don't want to put you in a politics lane too much, but both of these cases have a political tinge to them. You saw President Trump talking about the millions, the tens of millions of MAGA hat wearers who were insulted by what Jussie Smollett said and what he perpetrated, potentially, allegedly. And then you have a political lane in this. I mean, these are politicians who were targeted.
Yes, it's quite true. Lieutenant Hassan seems to only be targeting Democrat politicians.
And journalists.
And journalists on... I noticed he didn't threaten anyone at Fox, so maybe he only thinks of CNN as a liberal network. So maybe he was ideologically motivated, but that doesn't excuse or explain that this guy was trying to kill high-level members of the government and was accumulating, if you look at that, you showed the photo earlier in the clip, a huge arsenal. I mean, he had 4 AR-15s and handguns and a sniper rifle. And he has the training. He's not just a Coast Guard. He had been in the Marines. So this guy had the training and the resources.
That will be part of the case, no doubt. Journalists all over the world work for a lot of different people, and so whether he targeted those at CNN or wherever, it's a danger to us because we're under fire in a lot of different places around the world. John Yoo, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Harris.
This is a woman who inflicted enormous risk on American soldiers, on American citizens. She's a terrorist. She's not coming back. President Trump made clear that she wasn't coming back. She's not a U.S. citizen. She is not entitled to U.S. citizenship, and she's not coming back to our country to pose a threat.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the woman known as the ISIS bride, Hoda Mathana, will not be allowed back in the United States amid a dispute over whether the Alabama woman who joined the terror group in 2014 is even an American citizen at this point. Rich Edson is live at the White House with more. Rich?
Good afternoon, Harris. And this case is likely headed to court to determine if she is or ever was an American citizen. The State Department says she was never a citizen of the United States and refuses to let her in the country. Officials argue she was born in the U.S. to foreign diplomats, and the children of active diplomats born in the United States have no right to American citizenship. Her legal representative offers this: Hoda Mathana's birth certificate showing she was born in Hackensack, New Jersey, nearly 2 months after her father ended his work as a diplomat in Yemen's office to the United Nations. He argues that means Mathana was not born to foreign diplomats in the U.S., and she's therefore entitled to American citizenship. In 2014, Mathana was a college student in Alabama. She left for Syria to join ISIS, married ISIS fighters, had a child. She said she would burn her U.S. passport and urged attacks on the United States, including Memorial Day parades. Mathana's legal rep says she wants to return to the U.S. now and answer for that.
And as an American citizen, Hoda herself and her family simply want to face our legal system. She's willing to pay whatever debts she has to society. She's even willing to spend years behind bars if that's the debt she owes. And she wants to speak out to ensure that other young women are not brainwashed and manipulated into committing the same horrible mistakes that she's done.
She is currently waiting this out in a refugee camp in Syria. Now, as to the question as to why she ever had an American passport, the State Department official says that if a person acquires a U.S. passport and that it's later determined that they are not or should not have been an American citizen, that the State Department can then revoke that passport, though her attorneys are saying and argue that she was an American citizen and remains one to this day. Likely headed for the courts, Harris.
All right. Rich, thank you very much. Roger Stone is due in court. A lot going on in courtrooms in America. That happens in just about an hour from now. The longtime Trump advisor could face more legal trouble after posting a photograph of the judge in his case. And you had to see the photograph. Plus, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez feels the backlash from her hometown. A Times Square billboard is going after the congresswoman who applauded Amazon's decision not to build a big headquarters and bring thousands of jobs to New York City. We'll talk about it. Stay close. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is continuing to face backlash over her role in Amazon's decision not to build a second headquarters in New York. A conservative advocacy group is putting up a billboard in Times Square. They've done it, and it says, "Thanks for nothing, AOC." Now she's firing back. Doug McElway is on the story in Washington. Doug?
Yeah, critics say it's been a bad couple of weeks for freshman Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. First came that awkward rollout of the Green New Deal, a resolution that many economists and politicians from both sides of the aisle believe is ambitious, overly ambitious, and financially unattainable. And then came the decision by Amazon to reject plans to build their new headquarters in Queens. That after some Democrats, including Ocasio-Cortez, resisted. Here's what she told Fox News about why she disliked the Amazon deal that would bring 25,000 jobs to Long Island City.
That was the first question that we asked. Where are these jobs? What are they? What's the breakdown? Are they hiring locally? Will they commit to hiring New Yorkers? And we got no answers on that.
Now, a group called the Job Creators Network is firing back at her on what is arguably the biggest visible billboard in the heart of Times Square. It reads, "Amazon pullout. Thanks for nothing, AOC." In a statement, the Job Creators Network added to that, quote, "The Amazon pullout is a perfect example of what we've been saying. Socialism takes and capitalism creates." Ocasio-Cortez fired back on Twitter, quote, "Few things effectively communicate the power we built in fighting dark money and anti-worker policies like billionaire-funded groups blowing tons of cash on whack billboards, this one funded by the Mercers. P.S. fact that it's in Times Square tells you this isn't by or for New Yorkers." The Mercers, by the way, Robert and daughter Rebecca, are billionaires actively involved in conservative politics. Harris, back to you.
Doug McElway, thank you very much. I want to bring in Hugo Gurdon now, editorial director for the Washington Examiner, to talk more about this. You know, Hugo, I'd like to press with you on issues that have to do with messaging. So when you talk about the message and politically winning the message, who's doing so at this point with this one?
I think AOC is definitely losing the message. I mean, that the billboard is just part of it. But, you know, one of the things that's really bizarre about what AOC has done is that she's opposing this because it's bringing prosperity to her district of New York, or her region of New York. It's going to bring it would have brought 25,000 jobs with an average salary of $150,000. And one of the things that she really doesn't like is the fact that this might raise prices and it might gentrify the district that has voted for her and the next door district. She's not just doing this in an odd way against economic expansion, she's also doing it really hypocritically. Because as the Washington Examiner just reported a couple of days ago, now that she's earning $174,000 a year as a member of Congress, she's just moved into a gentrifying luxury apartment block with a golf simulator room and an infinity pool. And that apartment block specifically doesn't participate in an affordable housing program in D.C. So there's a lot of hypocrisy as well.
Well, and that's interesting. I suppose anybody can live what they want to live, except for the fact that she's saying that the rest of us can't.
Exactly. It's not the fact. I mean, you're absolutely right. She's now earning a very, very good salary, and
good for her. We live in a capitalistic society so far. She should be able to live where she wants.
Exactly. But she shouldn't be at the same time saying, "Oh, we don't want all of these great jobs coming to this area of New York because it might push up the price of housing, and what about local people?" Well, that's exactly the complaint that has been made against the place where she actually lives in Washington.
Well, can you talk to me, though, about the politics of democracy versus capitalism? Because this really isn't socialism versus capitalism as much as it is what we already have. I mean, is it kind of an undoing that she would, you know, we could read the Green New Deal, that's in PDF online.
Right.
But what about this vision?
You know, I think that the real problem with the deal, and in fact, the Washington Examiner opposed the kind of favors that New York City did in order to land the Amazon deal, is that it's a kind of crony capitalism. It makes the mayor and the governor look great in New York, but actually the taxpayers of New York, the other taxpayers, not in that actual region which was going to get all the jobs, but the rest of the state would have had to finance this through tax credits.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And the 25,000 jobs, average salary $150K. We're in a position now where, under the current administration, the economy has been generating jobs, but this was specific to an area in New York that is so expensive that really could have helped.
Yeah, absolutely it could. I mean, that's a lot of money coming into a region. I mean, and it has a knock-on effect. When you've got 25,000 people, whether they're local people or they're new people coming in, it's probably going to be a mixture of the two. It would be that amount of money coming into a locality and building the economy of that area. It's very weird. It's very unusual, except perhaps for someone like AOC and socialists who, to oppose economic growth of their own constituents.
Well, you use the words crony capitalism. I don't know that anybody would want to cozy up with those, but it's the capitalism part that would create those jobs. Before I let you go, are you hearing anything about a primary against AOC down the road? I mean, Crowley, who she beat out, had been in that position in that district for 10 terms.
Yeah, there is some whisper of her being primaried. Whether or not it would be Joe Crowley, who was actually in line to be, possibly the next, successor to Nancy Pelosi, whether or not it would be her. But I think there's a lot of resentment about the fact that she led the charge against what would have been a big investment in that area. And I think that a lot of local people are likely to blame her. Now, the headquarters would not have been precisely in her district, just next to her district, but it would have had an economic benefit for wider than that district.
Hugh Gurdon, thank you very much, Washington Examiner. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Harris.
New reports that President Trump could soon fire his Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats. The speculation now comes just weeks after Coats contradicted President Trump at a congressional hearing, saying it's unlikely North Korea will give up its nuclear weapons. But when asked about it by a reporter on Tuesday, President Trump said he hadn't thought about Coats' future. Roger Stone could be in more hot water. He's about to appear in a federal courtroom after posting a controversial picture of the judge in the case online. A live report on that next. Plus, shocking developments in the Jussie Smollett case. Chicago police are going after that Empire star for allegedly orchestrating a hate crime. It's where we started this hour, and more reaction after the commercial break.
We have problems that have affected people from all walks of life, and we know that. But to put the national spotlight on Chicago for something that is both egregious...
News has confirmed Robert Mueller's investigation is close to wrapping up. But before that, former Trump advisor Roger Stone will appear in court just minutes from now, we're told, to address an Instagram picture he posted of the judge in the case. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Harrigan, Washington with the news. Catherine?
Well, thank you, Harris. You can really say that this is a crisis of Roger Stone's own making, and it began a few days ago when he posted a photo of the judge in this case, Amy Berman Jackson, on Instagram, and in the back of that photograph you could see a target or a crosshairs, and Stone also included derogatory language about the special counsel investigation. He eventually took that photo down from Instagram. He reposted it without the crosshairs. He kind of moderated his derogatory language. Then he ultimately took all of it down and apologized, but that was apparently not enough for the federal judge in this case. Earlier today, Stone arrived at the federal courthouse here in downtown Washington. He did not speak to reporters. That's because of the partial gag order in the case that prevents him from speaking on the courthouse steps. I mention that because what we expect today is that the judge will revisit a number of issues, including the partial gag order and also his bail, which right now is $250,000, and whether those Instagram Instagram postings amounted to a threat against an individual, in this case the judge, or any kind of effort to thwart or obstruct justice in this case. Also, as you mentioned, we're tracking the Robert Mueller special counsel report, and based on our reporting here at Fox News, our contacts say that they believe they are in the end stages of the investigation, though there's been no formal report or confirmation to the president's lawyers that Robert Mueller has completed. But we're looking for something in days and weeks, but not longer. And that's because several data points have aligned. First and foremost, the new Attorney General William Barr in position at the Justice Department. He has also nominated a new number 2, Jeffrey Rosen, a senior Department of Transportation official. And we also have an end date for the current Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who oversaw the Russia probe for about 18 months. And he's always indicated that he wanted to remain at Justice until Robert Mueller delivered the report. Just to kind of sort of tamper expectations here, once that report is delivered to the Attorney General from Robert Mueller, it is considered a confidential report for the eyes only of the Attorney General, and William Barr will decide what summary he makes available to members of Congress as well as the public here. But just for context, he's already testified that he wants to make as much of the findings public as is reasonable in this case, Harris.
Catherine Herridge, thank you very much. Meanwhile, President Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, is set to testify publicly before Congress next week. Lawmakers say they will limit the questioning after consulting with the Justice Department. Cohen has delayed his testimony several times at this point, and a federal judge granted Cohen a 2-month postponement for reporting to prison as he recovers from shoulder surgery. Let's get back to one of our Fox Top stories. We are awaiting a court hearing for actor Jussie Smollett amid growing concerns over the social implications of his arrest for allegedly staging a hate crime attack. Chicago's police superintendent says he worries Smollett's actions will cast doubt on real victims in the future. Watch.
Now, of course, the Chicago Police Department will continue to investigate all reports of these types of incidents with the same amount of vigor that we did with this one. But my concern is that hate crimes will now publicly be met with a level of skepticism that previously didn't happen.
Joining me now is Tyrus, Fox News contributor and co-host of UnPC on the Fox Nation streaming service. Tyrus, I know you just got off a plane and stepped in here, so I appreciate you coming in. On first blush, when you found this out, what did you think?
I thought the story at first was suspect, but I withheld judgment. I made no comment, but I thought it was just too many descriptions in the original story. There was a lot of extra details, and being a guy who's worked in security for a long time in nightclubs and stuff like that, when somebody is attacked, it's usually very difficult because it's such traumatic. It happens so fast. They usually don't see things, so it's very hard for them to give descriptive details of what happened. Even things leading up seconds before, minutes before, he was very confused, and he was just really way too, there was just too many details for me. But I did this little trick called holding your tongue until you pass judgment.
Yeah, it's a trick. Apparently a lot of people don't have that trick. No. And you're very outspoken.
Yeah,
I want to talk to you, though, about the social elements with this. And the superintendent today seemed to get very emotional at this point. You know, he's black. He said he's leading a city where it's had some racial stress, and he understands the leveraging of racial pain in an instance like this for personal benefit. Those were his points of view. Everything's still alleged until we find out all the facts.
Yeah, my thoughts echo his. The frustrating thing for this is when somebody is really a victim and is really assaulted, and if they are somebody of fame, the first thing that's going to pop in everyone's mind is it for, in this case, they're alleging it was over salary. What were the reasons for this? I tend to think that he has some serious attention-seeking issues.
You're an actor.
Yes, and I still want to be one too.
And so when you look at this, you talk about those attention issues. We know that he had a salary issue that he didn't, according to reports on this police superintendent today, that this was pushed because he felt like he wasn't being paid enough on the show of Empire.
Yeah, but I don't understand how this would help him. I guess that's what's got me just racking my brain. What possessed this young brother to think that this was a good idea? I mean, there's no way, he was never going to get away with this, if allegedly. I'll keep throwing it out there.
He's a suspect. He went from victim to suspect.
Yeah, and that's pretty damning. The other two gentlemen involved, the two brothers involved, there's a videotape of them buying
They're
ski
cooperating
mask, and
witnesses.
they're cooperating fully, and there was a bank statement of $3,500 that was paid to them by him. So looks pretty rough.
You know, you could see it in our newsroom, and I would imagine people in front of their TVs around and mobile devices around the country and the world at that moment to see what had really happened. When you hear the Chicago PD superintendent say this about the pain of racism to his advantage and using that, let's watch this and then we'll talk.
This announcement today recognizes that Empire actor Jussie Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career. I'm left hanging my head and asking why. Why would anyone, especially an African American man, use the symbolism of noose to make false accusations?
You know, I saw you hang your head for a moment there too.
It's so frustrating. I mean, this has literally, and I said this before, this has been one of the most challenging Black History Months that I can ever remember. We've had so much hate and so many deceptive things and when you have to focus all the energy and the nation stops because it's different. We've come to a point, we still have a long way to go in some aspects. We've come to a point when behavior like this happens, when someone is actually attacked, the nation as a whole stops and wants to know why. It's not just a cover-up, so to speak. Like, if you go back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was a little different back then when something like this might not even made the news, even if he was making it up. And now, national attention, there's the whole city of Chicago, there's 12 detectives on this. I mean, there was politicians coming out, and although politicians sometimes use these to help their own message, but people did, I'm not hating, but everyone ran to this man's aid. But there's that, it goes back to that story, little boy calling wolf.
Well, and there's the political aspect that the president talked about, that the only symbolism wasn't just the rope, which was horrific. It was also the thought that there was a MAGA hat involved, and that wasn't true.
Yeah, and that's actually, it was the MAGA hat that threw everything off. Listen, there's bad people who wear the MAGA hat. There's also good people who wear the MAGA hat. So the MAGA hat, they got to take that hat back because take it away from the negative light. So that's besides the point. Ski masks, MAGA hat, unknown subject was the rumor to be bleach. I mean, those are two different hate crimes.
Yeah.
White supremacists typically don't pour bleach on you to make you look lighter. That's kind of not.
Can we talk real quickly about the social media element in all of this and how some of the politicians, Kamala Harris and others, I mean, what happens on social media to light this? We didn't.
No.
We looked at this quite differently as people of color. Why did this light up so quickly?
Because politics. This is a national issue. People are going to tune in like, what's going on, and they want to be on it. They want to be a part of that story. Instead of common sense saying, hey, let's wait and see what happens. I think that needs to be the new hashtag.
Well, Senator Cory Booker got there after he used the word lynching, and then he said, no, maybe I should wait for the facts.
And when he said that, I jumped all over him, and that's when I got it. One post.
I saw it.
And I was very respectful. I said, all due respect, sir. Like, you called it, you're going to call something a lynching, and now it's starting to look like it was a really bad theater show. Like you need to be, that's why you're going to struggle with getting the American people behind you, because you need to take stands and you need to condemn as well as when you want to protect somebody, but when they're wrong, you need to have that same vigor, and people respect that because that's called integrity. Not just, I'm only jumping behind you because it benefits me. You're wrong, you're wrong. I don't wish bad on this brother, but I'm ashamed of him. I'm ashamed to be an actor. I'm ashamed to be thrown in the same group as him because of this behavior. We make jokes sometimes when we always do dumb stuff like, bro, you just sent us back 10 years with that comment. He legitimately sent us back with this type of behavior because it's on the world scope.
Tyrus, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, if you haven't already, check out Fox Nation, our subscription streaming service that's packed with content, including Tyrus' show on PC. He hosts it daily alongside Britt McHenry at 6 p.m. Eastern. And you can watch it anywhere.
Anywhere.
Even on the app.
On the app.
A big change, I should say, of scene for Congressman Adam Kinzinger. An exclusive look at how his deployment at our southern border is going. Stay close. Congressman Adam Kinzinger and a different job, at least for 2 weeks. Kinzinger, a lieutenant colonel in the Air National Guard, is now finishing up his deployment at the southern border, and Fox News got exclusive access to talk with him about his unique situation. Casey Stegall, live in Tucson, Arizona. Casey?
Hey, Harris, good to see you. Yeah, there are about 1,800 National Guard troops currently deployed all up and down the southern border, 600 or so in Arizona, bringing in air assets that are extremely valuable, and that is where a politician puts on a different hat.
We'll just taxi out there. We'll brief all the departure.
Welcome to Congressman Adam Kinzinger's second job.
We don't talk about politics. We just hang out, we do the mission.
His mission has been piloting this military intelligence plane, the RC-26, over the Arizona-Mexico border for the past 2 weeks.
Well, it's neat because, when I'm on active duty, I've become apolitical.
Before politics, Kinzinger served in the U.S. Air Force, doing tours of duty in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Now a lieutenant colonel with the Air National Guard, he's fighting a different kind of battle.
Border Patrol has such a vast area out here they're trying to cover. They've asked us to bring air assets to help them.
The mountainous border terrain makes it difficult to spot illegal activity, but inside the Joint Task Force West Center, the work of Kinzinger and other pilots is crunched and analyzed in real time.
It helps us put the correct air asset on a target. It helps us answer the call for agents when agents are in the field requesting air support.
Officials say information and pictures gathered from flights like these can help stop smugglers and cartels.
To protect this country from, frankly, all the drugs that are coming over is awesome, and it's not the first time I've done it, and I hope it's not the last.
An eye-opening experience, and when the congressman says he gets back to Washington, he'd like to have a personal meeting with the president to sit down and tell him about his experiences firsthand out here at the border, Harris.
Fascinating. Casey Stegall, thank you very much. Senator Bernie Sanders is raising big bucks just days after he announced he was running for president. What is making him so popular again? Power panel slides in.
Today, Jussie Smollett, who has not been seen since his arrest, will make his first court appearance today at 2:30 after police say he staged a hate crime. Plus, Roger Stone is also back in court today at 2:30. Could the judge revoke his bail over an apparent threat on Instagram? And we have the new details on the Coast Guard lieutenant accused of planning a terror attack that he hoped would kill every person on Earth. Don't miss the daily briefing. It's at the top of the hour.
This socialism word, this is not the first time they've attempted to put this in the playbook to attempt to deflect people from the realities. Here's what Democrats are fighting for: results. We want to make sure that this economy works for everyone, not just a few at the top.
DNC Chair Tom Perez denying that Democrats are the party of socialism. Self-described socialist Bernie Sanders outraced his rivals by a long shot, bringing in nearly $6 million in 24 hours after he launched his campaign. Power panel now. Noel Nickpour, Republican strategist. Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio host. So, Bernie Sanders, Democratic socialist, running under the Democratic banner. Leslie?
He's an independent running as a Democrat as he did before caucuses with Democrats. He certainly has brought the Democratic Party to the left because now some things that he pioneered, like the fight for $15 for minimum wage, $15 for minimum wage, and also Medicare, all universal health care, are being touted by everybody. But it's a larger field, Harris. It's not just the left. There's sort of left of center, there's left of left, and then more centrist and moderate Democrats.
So a left lurch. But he's still a Democratic socialist. Noel?
Yeah, you know what? And when Tom Perez was on, he's saying that his party is not the party of socialism. They just want results. And, he was talking about all that. But I've got to tell you, whether he likes it or not, Harris, the DNC, they're going to be branded with socialism because the main people that are coming out, the main legislators that are getting a lot of airtime and getting a lot of hype are the people that are touting socialism. AOC. You have a lot of the freshman congresswoman who's breaking out with Green New Deal and everything else. So whether, Perez, the head of the DNC, comes out and says that it's not the party of socialism, it is being branded the party of socialism.
So what do you do if you're Joe Biden, Leslie Marshall, and you're in the middle and you see the lurch to the left that even you described?
Well, I think Joe Biden would do what we're seeing Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and others who are not as far left do, who are true progressives like Sherrod Brown, who might throw his hat into the ring. You have to stay on point and on the message that appeals to not only the majority of Democrats, but people out there who are Republicans unhappy with the president, independents who are looking for a home and don't like either party. And that's what you have to do, because if you pull to the middle more than to the left, as we've seen historically, it can win for Democrats.
Look,
it has. And
I just know that at the DNC convention, as we all stood to cover it, he had north of 45 million people who had supported him. They were